This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
If your fashion wish list lives rent-free in your brain, you need to be on Poshmark. With Poshmark, you're shopping millions of listings from thousands of closets, each curated by someone with their own style. Vintage finds, designer pieces, and everyday staples all in one place. Search for your favorites or let the discovery come to you. Poshmark makes it easy to find what you actually want to wear at prices that feel like a quiet win. Download the Poshmark app today and use code PODCAST10 when you sign up to get $10 off your first purchase.
A Swift Kick in the Ass, episode 94.
All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass. Join the journey of lifelong friends, John Curren and Tom Stewart, as they make conventional thought bend over and take a boot to the keister. Warning, listeners may notice a force equal to or greater than needed to get your ass moving. A swift kick in the ass, living life on your terms.
Welcome to another episode of A Swift Kick in the Ass. This is John Curren, your host, flying solo without Tommy today for today's episode, The Power of the Unexpected. We all know that life happens. There are just some things we can't control. We may be able to see some things coming our way, but we're not really in control of some aspects of our life. We aren't fortune tellers who can tell the future. And there are going to be surprises. Things come along that we just don't expect. Hopefully, most of these surprises are good things, and we love a good surprise. A surprise bonus, which means extra cash in the paycheck. Maybe we find $20 in our pants pocket, or we run into an old friend who we lost touch with a long time ago, and it just so happens we are thinking about them just a day or two before. It's really funny how that works. But life is full of both good and bad. And when bad things happen that are unexpected, it can be absolutely devastating. We may be powerless over the situation. What then? The ultimate goal of power is to have control over our discomfort, or at least try to minimize it. We'll never have complete control, authority, or the ability to influence all the things that happen in our life. That's just not going to happen. Our ability to control and influence actually ends at our fingertips. We can only control ourselves. We can't control other people. And the influence that we have over others is not guaranteed. In fact, little in life is guaranteed. And herein lies the key to deflating the power or loosening the grip of the unexpected. Because we know it can be devastating when the unexpected happens in a negative way. First, we need to recognize what's within our control to change and what is not. That is really a difficult thing to do, isn't it? Sometimes we think we can control something and we really have very little control over it. And it isn't until we stop to think about what we're going through that we actually realize that, you know what, there's nothing I could have done about that. Second, expect the unexpected. This is something I think I learned back in 5th grade when we used to play this game called Expect the Unexpected. And it seems like a minute later you'd get hit in the arm by your friend who was telling you, trying to teach you how to expect the unexpected. If you're worried or troubled about something that may or may not happen, you need to ask yourself what you can do about it and then take action to mitigate or reduce the impact of that risk. You know, there's no guarantee that it's going to happen, but sometimes the trouble really exists only in our mind and not in the real world. again, what do we do when our crystal ball is at the shop, and we can't read the future? Well, we don't have a crystal ball to begin with, and we can't read the future. We don't know what the future holds for us. It's unknown. So we need to assess that risk and try to determine, is it a really legitimate concern, or is it just our mind playing tricks on us? Or a situation is making us worry about something that we really have no control over. We need to think about our concern and the likeliness of it actually happening. And most of the time, it's not going to play out. We tend to think of life in extremes, either best case scenario or worst case scenario. The reality falls somewhere in between, and it may lay to one side or the other, but it hardly ever goes to the extremes. And just because something is possible doesn't make it probable. We could win the lottery, but we have to buy a ticket. And then if we do buy a ticket, there's probably a greater chance of us getting hit by lightning because the odds are just not in our favor. But when we buy that lottery ticket, what do we start doing? We start thinking about how our life is going to change and all the great things that we're going to buy, and that sports car and the big house, or maybe that trip. Who can tell? It's just a fantasy. Some things are going to be beyond our control and our influence, and we have to let these things go and leave them to fate. Again, think about the likeliness of it actually happening. It's probably not all that likely, but in your mind, we can build it up to, it seems so real that we build it up. And we think that it's actually happening when the chances of it actually happening are probably pretty slim. Just because something is possible doesn't mean that it's likely to happen. And if you keep thinking about this and then you still think that it's likely to happen, the question you should be able to ask yourself is, what can I do to minimize the risk of it happening, or how can I minimize the impact of it happening if it does happen at all? For example, if you're concerned with losing your job and being able to support yourself and your family or any other dependents, maybe your dog or your cat or your guinea pig, you want to have a roof over your head, you want to have food on your table, clothes on your back, you want to have gas for your car, maybe you want to buy a new car. We all have these different needs. But what can you do right here, right now, to protect yourself if you're concerned about losing your job? And I have to say, I've been there, and there's a lot that you can do. Put yourself in that situation and kind of role play and think about your expectations of what would happen if you lose your job. How are you going to react to it? And what kind of position are you going to be in if that happens? About 10 years ago, I knew that there was a great likeliness that my job would be eliminated. And at that time, my wife and I were several $100,000 in debt. And that did not include the mortgage on the house. I was up to my eyeballs. And I was actually getting quite depressed about it because it seemed like everything I had been trying to do to reduce that debt only put me in a deeper hole. So when I was faced with my job possibly being eliminated, I had reached my breaking point, and it prompted me to start focusing on my finances. I had to first assess what I was up against and write down. I started by writing a simple list of who I owed and how much I thought I owed. And then I built on that and figured out that I was really screwed. There was no possible way for me to eliminate all of that debt the way I was approaching the problem. Something drastic had to be done. And what I found out is that, once you write that list down and you really have a better sense of what you're up against, and the act of writing will make that real for you, it will help you better understand the picture, and it will sink in better. It was, even though it didn't change anything and I was still in debt, I actually felt better knowing exactly what I was up against and what my wife and I were up against. But our problems and issues and the things that we're concerned about go beyond our financing. So whatever your concern is, recognize that some of the silver lining in this thought process is that you're going to be better prepared if or when it does happen. I know that I became stronger from this experience, both personally and professionally, and it's really changed my life. 10 years on down the road, I don't have that debt hanging over my head. I'm paying down my mortgage, so I'm continuously reducing my exposure to risk, financial risk, that is. And, I actually did lose my job about a year into this process. And it also made me stronger because I realized that it didn't really matter what I did for a living, as long as I was able to keep my income, coming in, keep paying off that debt, keep on my plan, that I was actually going to be happy just knowing I could provide for my family. I really didn't need much more than that. I had a clear path, and as long as I was able to keep moving forward on that path, I was going to make it work. It didn't really matter what I did. I wasn't going to be hung up on losing that specific job because, your life neither ends nor begins with insert employer here. It made me stronger for it, and it absolutely changed my life. And going through that process, or that experience of losing my job, made me lose my fear of it happening. I actually came out stronger from it. I got a better job out of it. It didn't kill me. All the things I expected to happen didn't really play out, except for my ability to move forward on this path and this plan I created. So, these unexpected events and circumstances and happenings, they have power over our lives. And if we're not prepared for them, we even have less power in it. So this hits us at a very personal level. But there are things that happen out in this world that are still unexpected and have a broader effect, not just affecting you or your family, but affecting huge groups of people. Think about natural disasters or terrorism, acts of terrorism. Some of these situations are easy to imagine, like a tornado hitting your town or going through a hurricane or a flood or something terrible. You've seen pictures. You may not have gone through it yourself, but you know a little bit about it. We've all witnessed what happened on 9/11, and the pictures of that day are in the back of our mind. So we can picture these terrible things, and of course should be concerned about them. But what about when the unexpected circumstance is unimaginable? I was talking to a forensic psychiatrist friend of mine who was saying that when we hear about what criminals will do, it's often unimaginable, and we just can't believe that some people are even capable of doing whatever they've done. It just doesn't register in our mind. And the reason why it doesn't register is because we're not criminals. We don't have a criminal mind. And therefore, it's hard for us to imagine because we just don't think that way. When I was younger and in middle school and high school, there was a growing threat of nuclear war. It was a threat, and it still is a threat, but it's probably more likely today that some type of cyber attack is going to impact us more than a nuclear war. It's probably more likely that someone is going to hack into a major computer system and do damage that way than someone hitting the button and taking out a city with a nuclear weapon. Cyber attacks, while hopefully there's no death involved, as compared to a nuclear war, which is definitely going to have an impact on human lives, it might seem a little bit better, but it's still going to be horrific. If we live through a cyber attack, what are the consequences of that? What can happen? Will it affect our power? Our power grid? Will it just take us out and we won't have power for some length of time? I'm not talking about just like cutting the cable line in your backyard when you're gardening, I don't know, some people might have done this past weekend. And the cable guy told my wife it was water on the line. But I confessed to it. I broke the cable line with my shovel. Anyhow, what do we do if we're without power or internet or phone or these things that we take for granted? For most of America, for a large part of America, we live near cities, or those of us who live near cities take a lot for granted. There are probably several grocery stores in your area. There are restaurants. There are places you can go to get the things that you need, and they're convenient. Most of the country, though, is people living in rural environments. That's one of the reasons why Amazon is taking off like it is, because it's easier for people to go online and order whatever they need and have it delivered to them than it is to drive, an hour or so into town just to get, a tube of toothpaste. It's better, and it's a little bit more expensive online, but, it saves them time, and time is money. We take a lot of these things for granted. But what happens if the transportation network fails somehow? Maybe the interstates are closed for some reason, and the truckers who haul all of our goods around the country can't get to the stores to deliver their goods. A good friend of mine, he's a truck driver, cross-country truck driver, kind of raised that issue in a conversation I had with him. We take a lot of things for granted. And I'm not trying to freak anyone out here, but I'm trying to get you to think about the possible, unexpected things that could possibly happen that have great impact on us. And it is my belief that if we can think about these things in a calm, kind of logical way, that if it does happen, we will hopefully have taken steps to be better prepared and have addressed some of these concerns up front. Now, the challenge here is knowing how to best spend your time, effort, and resources. We shouldn't worry about things that are beyond our control or influence because it's just really a waste of our time. But we can do a lot. And if we focus on what we can do right here and right now, you'll probably find that there are more things that we can do to alleviate our concerns than the number of things where our hands are tied and we don't have any control or influence. There's usually much more that we can do than we can't do. And the fact is that, these what-if scenarios, and I've mentioned just a few, it's actually countless in number. It's maddening to think about all the possible things that could go wrong in this world and in our lives. And most of it's going to be out of our hands. So, I advocate that we don't worry about things that we can't change. We don't worry about things that we can't do anymore, or the friends that we've lost, or changes in our health status, or we worry about the things that we can have impact on, and there's going to be quite a lot. Focus on what you can do to best serve your interests, and the more you can do that, and the better prepared you will be, the stronger you will be, and the more power you will have over these unexpected things that have such great power over our life. I'll close this episode with saying that, doing this episode alone as a solo host may be an unexpected surprise to some of our listeners. And I certainly hope it's a good one. I hope you enjoy future Swift Kick in the Ass episodes. And I will say that Tommy will be back. I plan on him being back. I plan on him participating in future episodes. But as you know, when you have brain cancer, he has 5 brain tumors, it's very difficult for him. And he needs to focus on things that will make him healthy, and he needs to focus on his health. And he's just not able to do podcasting like we used to do. So I wanted to try to pick up some of the slack for him. He feels it's very important. I feel it's very important. We have, for the last 5 years, had a message of creating positive change in your life and living life on your terms. And I have to say that, I would have never imagined that Tommy, who's like a brother to me, I've known him all of my life since I was 5 and he was 4. I would have never, I never ever even never thought the thought never crossed my mind that one of my best friends would be afflicted with brain cancer. And Tommy never expected it either. But really, here we are. And in our last episode, that was the titleless episode. There's no title. It's episode 93. Tommy mentioned that he recognizes that this is not a fight he can win. So he's accepted that, and he's focusing on what he can do. And there's quite a lot he can do. He's has an exercise routine now, and he's eating more healthy, and he's trying a lot of different therapies. And I really hope and pray that he is able to be around and live a good, productive life. And, not only for this podcast so he can come back and do more episodes, I want the guy around. But he says that, this is not the end of him. This is his origin story. And my doing this episode on my own, doing it solo, it's part of the origin story for the Swift Kick in the Ass podcast. When Tommy and I first came up with this idea and started working on developing this podcast about 5 years ago, we always recognized that what we were creating was bigger than either one of us. And we really didn't want the podcast to rely on personality, on people. We felt it was more important to send out a message and help others create positive, lasting change in their life and help them live life on their terms. It was important then, and it's just as important now, if not more important. All of our lives have terms associated with them. These are the things that we must live with. And unfortunately, Tommy has a term that is threatening his life. And I wish him well and all the best. And I'm going to be there with him every step of the way to the very end. But I would have been there every step of the way to the very end, regardless of if he had a brain tumor or not. He's family to me. So Tommy's doing as well as can be expected. He's adapting to his new terms, the new terms of his life, and I believe he will be back on future episodes as he's able to do so. So you will see some episodes with me just going solo. You'll see some episodes where Tommy's providing updates on what's going on in his life, and we hope that you can help apply that in your life, or we hope that what we talk about will help your life and help you create positive change. But, one thing for sure that you can expect is that I will be back with more episodes, more topics of discussion, more things for you to think about, more perspectives that perhaps you haven't, looked at something or thought of something in a certain way. That's what we're all about here at A Swift Kick in the Ass, unless something unexpected happens. Until our next episode, this is John Curren. I'll catch you soon. Peace. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of A Swift Kick in the Ass, and that today's topic inspires you to get your ass moving and living on your terms. Please take a moment to rank this episode on iTunes or wherever you get this podcast. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Visit our website at aswiftkickintheass.com. Have a great day.